Hi, this is Laura. Welcome to week 5 of Elements of Learning Experience Design. This week we have a number of topics, but primarily they all fall under something called embodied learning. Our topics, as I mentioned, are embodied learning and some elements that are related: user testing, alignment, iteration, and reflection. And then we'll have an overview of our week 5 activities. Just a reminder, as we do each week, of where we are in our learning. So we are at the latter part of phase 3 and the early part of phase 4. So you've been working on your prototypes. You did a prototype last week and you shared with your peers in the class. And then this week you're going to take that to the next level and find 2 to 3 users that will look at your prototype and give you some feedback. And then you're going to do what the data analyst piece and gather that feedback in order to make what are called design moves or changes to your prototype, and then do an additional or a couple additional iterations during this week, and then share out again with the peers in the course. So embodied learning is an educational method that not only offers an intellectual way of teaching, but also involves the whole body. So as an example here, you can do math while throwing small bags of sand to each other. So think of it as kind of kinesthetic type of learning, but it acknowledges that our brain, our cognitive piece of our body, actually is part of us, and that part of our cognitive learning involves physical movement, physical actions, and can actually be strengthened by embracing this idea of embodied learning and making your learning more physical. And so as the activities occur, learners can reflect on their experience and incorporate the ideas with prior knowledge. Here's kind of the general process. The body and mind cooperate in the learning process, and action and thinking are intertwined, and there's a connection between movement and concepts. So as I mentioned, this week, the bulk of your efforts will be in getting 2 to 3 individuals that make sense. So think back to your empathic and empathetic thinking and learning, where you were developing your user personas, and some of you may go back to those exact individuals that you talked to before or thought about, to have them do user testing of your prototype. And so user testing is usability testing, and you're wanting to determine how easy your design is or how effective your design is with a group of representative users. And you, if possible, I understand we only have a week to do this, so just do your best, but it does involve observing users as they attempt to complete tasks, and can be done for all different types of designs. So here's some methods. You can do in-person, remote, and you can do what's called guerrilla, which is really ad hoc type of usability, people that you really don't know, to get their feedback. So do your best this week. You're going to be having them look at your prototypes, give you feedback, and then you're going to decide if you're going to change anything or what changes you're going to make, and then make at least one iteration. You may do more than one. So as you're doing this, you may find in some of the feedback, but you may want to do a quick overview of your prototype before your user testing on the concept of alignment. So alignment in instructional learning design is critical to ensuring learners actually learn what is intended. That's what alignment is you want them to learn something, and then you're assessing whether or not your course is aligned in such a way that allows those learners to learn the concepts. And so at minimum, you have some resources this week to consider, but here are some things at minimum you want to consider in terms of alignment. You would like clear, measurable course learning outcomes. You want to make sure those exist, that you want to make sure that your unit level outcomes advance course outcomes. So you have course level and unit level. So think of our class like we have course level outcomes, we have weekly outcomes, which are the unit level. And then you want to make sure that within each of those unit level areas, that your assignments actually measure the unit level and course level outcomes. You want to tie all of the things together. And so your design should also include both formative and summative assessments. So summative are generally at the end, formative are along the way. So different kinds of assessments that allow you to gauge learning along the way and as a result or at the end of learning activities. And then the design should include clear rubrics and grading guides, and learning resources and activities are accessible and equity minded. We'll talk a little bit more about this in our week 6, but do keep in mind making sure the resources are accessible. So as I mentioned, you will have an opportunity to do your user testing, You'll see in this picture here, we've been looking at this before in our design thinking process. You've worked on, early on, you did the personas, you defined your problems, you've done ideation and prototyping, and then we're in testing. So you can see the little circles that go back and forth, and you might go back to thinking, even back to the empathizing with your users as they give you feedback. And then you want to make sure as much as possible, sometimes users give you feedback you don't expect, and sometimes it can even you might even feel a little defensive or like, oh, I'm the designer, I should know better. But make sure you really work on empathizing with your end users as they give you feedback. And then the other part of iteration that can really help is if you can keep as much of an open mind as possible and do a lot of reflection. So you'll learn this week these concepts of reflection in action and reflection on action. And reflection in action means thinking about what one is doing while you're doing it. And so as you observe these individual end users using your prototype or testing out your prototype, you also think about yourself, reflect on what is happening while it's happening. And then reflection on action involves kind of what's called a cognitive postmortem, where a practitioner reviews actions in light of the outcomes. So this is kind of the after part of reflection, like what did you actually learn? So there's going to be things where you might have to be very reflective as you get the feedback, and then afterwards you'll have an opportunity to review it again, and then you can see how you feel at a later time. But part of your ability to improve your designs for your end users is going to be connected directly to your ability to reflect effectively on when you first receive the feedback, how you feel about it, and then what you do with that feedback, and then also later when you look at the feedback you get. So I hope that makes sense. This is a very important concept in your practitioner toolbox to learn how to reflect on feedback and on your own actions. So here's our assignments this week. You will do, as typical of individual and small group assignments, you'll essentially be doing your user testing, checking on alignment, and then you're going to use the user testing feedback to give you ideas about what's called design moves or changes you want to make, and then you will iterate your prototype. Again, you're welcome to do it multiple times, but at least make sure you do it one time. And then you're going to be sharing that out with your small groups and getting feedback. You do want to try and start early this week so you can get as much feedback as possible. And then your whole class discussion will allow you to do kind of a meta reflection. So you're going to be reflecting on reflection in and on action and the strategies you've experienced. What you might want to analyze, are you very good at reflecting? And when you reflect and you come up with ideas, are you very good about changing? And are you open to feedback? So you're going to be spending some time doing the meta reflection this week. And in summary, here's what we're doing. We have some new learning experience design resources, as I mentioned, on embodied learning, user testing, iteration, prototyping, alignment. You'll continue to share with your peers on your iterations of your prototype, and then you're going to be reflecting on your own practice. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing your iterations.